telemedicine for the patient in a lot of cases is extremely convenient. It's the difference between ordering a cab and ordering an Uber, going into the office versus dialing up on the phone. For the physician, I don't think this is something most physicians are likely to enjoy very much for a couple of reasons. Part of the reason why people go to med school, a lot of them, is they enjoy interacting with patients. They enjoy, talking to a patient, poking, a little prodding, tongue depressor, check the heart rate, things like that. The diagnostic part of it is a fulfilling piece of what they do. When you take that out of it, they are effectively now a customer service representative for any, name any company like the cable Comcast. When you call in, that's what's happening, is they are being commodified. And there's a couple the job less enjoyable for most of them. But it also is going to start to push down their pay. Now, some doctors are very highly paid. Some family practice doctors may not be that highly paid. And so you're going to create this situation where you're pushing down wages overall. What's ultimately going to happen in that space, and I think this is what you'll see with the telemedicine lobbying, is this will consolidate into there's right now a competition in the ways this is going to work. This is either going to work as, hey, there's 2 or 3 telemedicine apps that just every doctor uses, and you still have a relationship with your doctor, but you can engage via this app. That's one model. The other model is there's only going to be a handful of companies that provide telemedicine, and you are a customer of one of these handful of companies. Maybe they're owned by your insurer, and like that's it. And so every doctor has to work for one of these 5 companies. So that's what I think is going on with telemedicine and telemedicine lobbying overall, is you're seeing a battle, how that looks. And you're also going to see the physicians realize and I think they have for a long time. That's why in a lot of states, physicians fight telemedicine or telemedicine cross state boundaries. But you're going to see the physicians gear up very quickly, I would think, to start fighting and trying to restrain where telemedicine can go. Because if you let it out, a doctor and an Uber driver become the same thing pretty quickly. It's just the doctor had to pay a lot more money to become an MD than the Uber driver did to become an Uber driver.
And the driving force, it would seem, behind this is the insurance companies in a lot of cases. When I tried to make a selection on what I was going to do to get the visit I described at the top of this session. I didn't try to connect with my doctor, my primary healthcare doctor, via telemedicine. I basically saw what Blue Cross would pay for, and I ended up getting a free visit. Basically, that was something that they were doing, is offering free telemedicine visits, but they had to do that through Teledoc. So it was the third party service
Yep.
that the insurer in this case had partnered with in order to deliver that. So that is a situation where you're going to have insurance companies driving the decisions there, which I think we can probably all agree isn't a great situation. Now, one thing that is interesting is how telemedicine has evolved in the business world. So let's say outside of the typical like doctor patient relationship where you go see a primary care physician or a dermatologist or whomever in your local town, we've seen startups pop around the concept of telehealth. And I'm thinking of startups like Roman. Interestingly enough, a lot of them seem to be in the men's health space, because something that is easy to make a diagnosis for and then send a prescription into a pharmacy for are some men's health issues, right? Erectile dysfunction, hair loss. So those have been the big services that pop up around it, because they can give you the appointment on their platform, and then they're selling you. In some cases they're calling a prescription into the pharmacy, but most of these startups are actually just mailing you the prescription to your front door, right? The hair loss pill, the hair loss cream, the erectile dysfunction pill, their packaged version of generic Viagra or whatever it is. So that's how they're making their money, is by giving you a free or discounted telehealth visit in order to get you into their subscription model for their product.
Yeah, and it's interesting that model, Matt. Like it, so the thesis underlying those businesses is that to the degree you can reduce the friction between the patient's potential need and the physician's ability to prescribe, is the gain you have the potential to make in the marketplace,
And I
right?
also
So
think
there's
specifically in those cases, it's reducing the friction because it's topics that men are not necessarily super willing or
Sure.
anxious to go in and talk about in person in the
With their
office.
doctor, yeah,
Right.
or, a doctor they know, but if it works there, it'll work in other places. So another place we see it a lot, is the prescription of, say, antidepressant medications is a big
Mhm.
one now that, you're seeing, and it'll eventually pop up, everywhere.
I think
The
seasonal
it
allergies is another place you'll
Yeah,
see a lot of concentration. There's a service I'm sure that'll pop up that is just going to mail you an allergy test to your house. You'll see a doctor, they'll prescribe, a prescription asthma inhaler
yeah.
or allergy
And
medication.
it's interesting we talk about this because this is one of those situations where the pandemic is probably acting as an accelerator on these
100%.
items, and it's
Yeah,
probably moving it forward by 10 years. This overturning in the medical marketplace was already in progress. It's been in progress for probably more than a decade, but this probably has sped up and it sped it up on the consumer acceptance side. Same way work from home, very similar, right? Like this was probably going to remote work was going to be a thing anyway. It was how quickly would it happen? The pandemic ends up as a forcing function that gets people to accept it. Some people like it, some people think it's suboptimal, but they're willing to do it. And so you get to break an existing market pattern with this, macro scale impact.
hmm,
But this is, something to watch. You mentioned businesses, and this is one of the other stories we have in here. But Amazon providing telehealth for its workers, and so there's another area where you could have the employer reduces its insurance cost by just hiring 5 doctors to just do telehealth
yeah,
all day long for its employees.
yep,
Um, so the way this whole industry is going to shake out, no one knows yet, but it's changing incredibly fast. And my guess is it's not changing in a good way for your average physician. There's going to be
sure.
some physicians who own or have ownership in some of the pieces of this infrastructure, which is going to be important. But I think most physicians end up catching the downside of this.